Hello and welcome to the Metal Pack Pod, the industry's leading podcast for the global metal packaging market. The Metal Pack Pod is brought to you by the Metal Packager, the number one digital resource for the global can making business. With over 7,000 monthly users in over 150 countries globally, be sure to check us out on metalpackager.com. Please do like our podcast, tick that like button, it would be most appreciated. In this episode, we speak with Michelle Garza, Director of Strategic Accounts for Anderson Vreeland. In this episode, she discusses the technology and industry best practices behind photopolymer plates used in metal decorating for can making. The conversation covers plate making processes, the importance of prepress, plate care, storage and cleaning best practices. The episode also highlights the value of proper plate handling to maximise lifespan and sustainability. Michelle has over 30 years in the flexographic and letterpress industry and brings expertise in photopolymer technologies specialising in the metal deco, can industry and tag and label market segments. But before we begin the episode, we must give special mention to our sponsors, PPG Packaging Coatings. Their range of innovative and sustainable solutions help protect and beautify the world. Now on to today's show. Just to kick things off, perhaps for our listeners who aren't quite as well acquainted with the technology, if you can give me perhaps an overview of photopolymer plates and why it's so critical in the printing process.
So obviously the photopolymer plate is used to print the can with the decorator. They couldn't do it if they didn't have it. What's really important about the photopolymer plate is the way it's manufactured, and it has a steel base, and that steel base keeps the plate rigid, which allows it to run in high speeds, which is perfect for can making.
Excellent stuff. And in terms of yourself, your kind of heritage within the industry, it'd be great to perhaps give our listeners a bit of an overview about your background within the industry as well.
Okay. So I always say I was born into the industry. My father was in the industry. He started in 1964, and he ended up owning his own business. I started working with him, 30 years ago, and he obviously is now retired, and I've continued, and maintaining his legacy is really important to me.
Excellent stuff. No, you must be so proud of your legacy as well.
Very much so, yeah. And so now I'm with Anderson Vreeland. I've been with them for over a year, and my primary focus is the Tyobo products, which we sell into the metal deco arena.
And just in terms of the plate making process, you mentioned kind of two technologies. So correct me if I'm wrong, but CTP and DLE.
Correct.
If you can just break down the main differences between the two for someone who's perhaps new to the industry, so perhaps a good overview of place for us to start.
Sure. So there are two ways to process plates: CTP, which is computer to plate, and then we have DLE, which is direct laser engraving. CTP is the most common way to process a plate, and with today's technology, that can be used with almost all can making, so solids and screen work. Where digital laser engraving is a little bit of a slower process, and the equipment's a little bit more expensive, but the trade-out is precision. You get very sharp dots, clean shoulders, and that's used for your high resolution work and your fine screens.
And just if you can just walk us through kind of the step-by-step process about how a plate's made from kind of digital image to press ready. I'm kind of interested in the technology, how that works, and the advantage for can makers by knowing that process essentially.
Okay, so photopolymer plates is a light-sensitive plastic material, and it requires UV exposure to create the image. So, for instance, the CTP, an imager puts the image on the mask, lasers it onto the mask, and then the mask is exposed, and then the material is hardened. And so the remaining soft polymer needs to be washed away with a plate processor and brushes. So the remaining mask and the soft polymer is rinsed away. The plate is then dried and post-exposed to be cured, and then it's ready to go out to press. And then direct laser engraving, a high CO2 laser engraves the image directly onto the plate. There is no mask. And it's basically then just rinsed and dried and ready to go to press as well. I would say the only difference between the two is the dot structures, and it just depends on the work that's being printed on the can, which way they go.
Excellent. And in your presentation, you went into a lot of detail about the pre-press process, about how critical that is to the overall production process. So if you can just elaborate on that. And there's an interesting quote from your presentation. You said about the fact that if a pre-press is wrong, there's nothing you can do on a press to fix that. If you can just elaborate on that a little bit, that'd be great.
Yeah. So that all has to do with a few things. In the pre-press side is how the art file is prepared. That's a whole nother session you could do, because that's not my technical ability. The plate has to be processed correctly to form clean dots and clean shoulders. And that has to do with the exposure of the plate. And then all the other steps, washing the polymer away also. If it's not imaged correctly, it can affect the print in many different ways. So it can, if it's underexposed, you have sloped shoulders, and those shoulders can print on the can and make the image look dirty. If it's overexposed, it can make the plate very hard, and it will eventually crack and brittle in the middle of a press run. If it's underwashed, all the polymer is not removed. The soft polymer is not removed, and that can get stuck in the images, and that can print. So once that plate is post-exposed and cured, there's nothing you can do to change the plate or correct it. And so if that plate ends up on press, there's literally nothing they can do on press to change or correct the print.
So essentially it's based on precision at the kind of the pre-press process. It's critical to the overall process. And do you think perhaps the industry and can makers perhaps underappreciate that as a concept? They kind of take things for granted until something then goes wrong. So it's about precision right at the outset. And do you think perhaps sometimes your customers not misunderstand that, but do you think that it's one of those things that's kind of taken for granted until something goes wrong?
Yeah, absolutely. So the plate's a consumable. And so I don't think they really understand the importance of the plate, and it has to be QC'd correctly before it even gets sent out on to press. But yeah, the plate is very, very important. And if it's not processed correctly, if it's not handled correctly, if it's not stored correctly, it can't be used.
And you alluded to it earlier, but in terms of dot shape, like flat compared to round top dots, I mean, why does that matter so much in print quality? For someone, myself, who's not a printer, it's one of those things that, like, does that really matter so much? I'm guessing it does.
It does. The tip of the dot is how the ink transfers onto the blanket, which then transfers to the can. And that is what gives you clean, crisp lettering. If you have a round top dot, which is like the analog days, the shoulders slope, so the ink can spill down onto those shoulders, and that's where you get fuzzy edges and not very clear letters, or even images, and they can blend into each other.
And also, just want to move the conversation on somewhat. I was really interested in your presentation, the storage and handling side of things, and I was really surprised about kind of how temperature makes such a big difference, and leveraging into kind of environmental changes and climate change, etc. And I think if we take things one step back in terms of can makers, and is there any kind of mistakes that plants make in kind of plate storage as a result?
Yeah, unfortunately, a lot of the plants, their capacity is limited, and so there usually isn't proper storage at a plant. And as I mentioned in my presentation, storage and handling is what protects those plates and extends their press life and allows them to be used again. And so it's really important that plates are stored in a temperature-controlled room at about 77 degrees, at 50 to 70% relative humidity. It's best to store them flat and in sealed plastic bags, and that helps keep the moisture in. But typically, you see plates in folders, out on shelves, stored upright out on the plant floor, exposed to UV lights and high temperatures. And with that, the plate is instantly degrading. It is drying out, it's contracting, and it just, the plate will not last as long as it should on the press.
How quickly can a plate degrade?
Within minutes.
Really?
Yeah. I've been in a plate room where actually the humidity was really low, and the plates were out on the counter, and within, I don't know, probably 15 minutes, the edges started to curl a little bit, which was showing that it was already contracting.
Do you have any examples of where this has happened in terms of a customer that's come to you and said, look, this is the situation, and although you can't do anything now, but obviously flagging that it's a useful case study perhaps for other customers to say, look, you need to be taking this seriously?
We do get complaints. They think the material is, there's something wrong with the material because it cracks early in the press run, or they can't register it because it's curling. And typically when we go into a plant and do an audit, it's typically the storage that's incorrect or improper that degrades the polymer. And then other times we've seen improper cleaning of the plate with incorrect cleaning solutions. But yeah, it's typically the plate has been exposed to UV light or high temps and it's dried out.
So do you have like a step-by-step guide on storing these plates then as a result? What would you kind of, not to go into too much detail, but perhaps kind of key kind of 3 points about how the plant should store these plates?
Well, in a perfect world, it'd be great if they could be in a climate-controlled room, but we know that's not pretty typical. At the minimum, they should be stored flat in sealed plastic bags, not in cardboard, not in folders, because cardboard, paper sucks moisture out of the plates. So some kind of plastic container, flat, and if they're stacked on top of each other, it should be no more than 20 plates. And then if you can even put it in a plate room that's not temperature controlled, if you could at least have a sensor that you can track the temperature and humidity and keep an eye on that. And
I'm guessing with climate change and temperatures, this is going to be becoming a more and more important topic over time. I mean, say 10, 15 years ago, was this as much of an issue? Was this something that's, because of rising temperatures, has become more and more of an issue?
This has been the problem of polymer for as long as I know. Okay. It's cracking. Polymer cracks. It dries and it cracks if it's not stored or handled properly. But we have seen a rise in more cracking because of the change in the climate. Last year was the hottest year on record. There was big swings in temperature and humidity, and that comes inside your plant. The plant themselves, the presses throw off so much heat that already heats up the plant. You don't need any assistance with outside temperatures. So it's just really important to protect the plates in those kind of situations.
And for plant managers, perhaps listening to this, is there kind of one key rule for plate care that they should be implementing in their plant? And if so, what is that?
There's actually probably two rules.
Okay.
Do not expose them to UV light and or heat sources. So a lot of plants will mount the plates onto the cylinders and stage them near the decorator to be ready for the next job. And it's being exposed, so it's being exposed to heat sources, and it's literally drying out while it's sitting there. So at the minimum, we say, if you're going to stage your jobs, keep them away from the heat sources and away from UV lights, and that will help extend the life of the plate. Yeah,
and I'm guessing the topic that I want to get into now in terms of cleaning as well. I mean, are there best practice kind of tips from Anderson Vreeland for your customers and for cleaning the plates without damaging? Because from an outsider looking in, it's one of those things you take for granted. You just obviously just use water and just give it a clean and job done. But it's obviously it's far more sophisticated than that.
Well, and a lot of the plants are trying to do their best to have no VOCs. And so they look for environmentally safe cleaners to clean their plates. And most environmentally safe cleaners are made of water. And photopolymer is water soluble. So if you use water to clean the plate, it is going to start to degrade the plate. It's going to literally break down. And so any plate out there, every manufacturer has a list of acceptable cleaning solutions that can be used with their plates. So it's really important to use approved cleaners. It's really important not to use any cleaners that have water content. And even a lot of plants have cleaners to clean their press. Those can't usually be used on the plates as well.
Do you have like a checklist for operators at all in terms of X, Y, Z? You need to be implementing this, or is it?
There are SOPs on handling and storage. There is a checklist for QCing the plate. Usually every plant has a quality control division, and they should be inspecting the plates and checking the dots are clean and the shoulders are clean before they even go out to press.
We now have a quick break to check in with our friends at PPG.
Packaging coatings from PPG draw on our company's 140-year history of innovation. We never stop improving our solutions to meet the evolving needs of can makers and the marketplace. That spirit of innovation results in technology like the cradle-to-cradle platinum-rated PPG Innovel Pro. PPG Innovel Pro is the latest enhancement to the world's #1 non-BPA beverage can coating. It still doesn't use any bisphenol ingredients, but experienced can makers report that it now sprays like an epoxy. Follow PPG Packaging Coatings on LinkedIn or visit packagingcoatings.com to learn more about why PPG is the coatings partner for can making excellence.
And just in terms of the industry as a whole, I just want to move the conversation on to kind of trends you're seeing at the moment. I mean, it's the healthy industry. What's your kind of overall take on the can making business at the moment? Is perhaps compared to Anderson Vreeland and some of the other industries that you're in? How do you kind of assess the overall health of the industry at the moment?
Well, I think metal deco has been a consistent industry. We saw a real spike during COVID, obviously with everyone staying home and enjoying more beverages. Mm-hmm. I also think the younger generation is more in tune to environmental and recycling and sustainability. So they tend to choose canned beverages. Mm-hmm. Typically, if you walk into a bar, you see a can in everybody's hand. And so this industry is continuing to grow. Even though the process is the same and has not changed for a very long time, we are seeing more growth in the digital arena. Yeah. Craft brewery was a big growth area. I think that's starting to come down a little bit, as we heard in one of the sessions. But yeah, it's always been a very consistent market.
Yeah, and do you think it's perhaps a concern that the industry, because of cost of living and inflationary pressures in the last couple of years, that consumption habits are perhaps declining a little bit as a result? So perhaps that puts a little bit pressure on the industry. I know it's not kind of sorry to put you on the spot. But it's not I know it's not exactly your area, but you've got obviously a very good overview of kind of what your customers are saying. It's always good to get kind of the vibe that everyone's feeling at the moment. And do you think that environmental and kind of sustainability choices by consumers are important? But for me, it comes down to cost. So if financial pressures for the consumer are a little bit more tough, then they're going to make a choice on price rather than sustainability. Or do you think it's perhaps a little bit more robust than that for young people?
I think the financial side does come into it, but I really think the younger generation, what we're hearing is drinking alcohol is not as important to them. Mm-hmm. So we are seeing a decline in that arena. But, the can industry has always been a very consistent growth. It continues to grow.
Yeah, it seems to adapt and evolve. And you're right in terms of younger people not drinking perhaps as much as their parents' generation, so to speak, but you see the rise in energy drinks and zero beers, for instance, and THC-infused drinks. So I think this industry, it adapts and evolves as a result, and that's what makes it, I suppose, such an interesting industry to be in.
Yeah, and then we're also seeing different size cans now. We're seeing much smaller cans. We're now seeing cocktails being put into cans, champagne. When you go on an airplane, you're starting to see the cans that have cocktails in them. They constantly revolve and adapt with what the consumer wants.
And just to wrap things up in terms of what we discussed today, I mean, is there a kind of one key takeaway for people to remember from this conversation? Certainly in terms of plate care and process control. I know that's kind of your one kind of message for perhaps your customers or those listening to this podcast.
Mm-hmm. Well, at least as a supplier, I know what it takes to make a plate, and by the time that plate gets to the plant, it costs about $17. And when you see poor storage and poor handling, and the plates just being treated like a consumable and thrown out when they could be handled and cleaned properly and used again, I don't know, to me, that's a part of the whole environmental footprint, right? Mm-hmm. So we just want to help our customers to better utilize the plates and be able to reuse them again.
And not asking you to play clairvoyant, but I mean, is there any trends coming up in the next 5 to 10 years in terms of printing plate development that you're particularly excited about or cautious about? How the industry, I know AI and automation has certainly been a key topic at the moment within the industry. I mean, that perhaps certainly in the printing plate side of things, that brings with it some opportunities, but perhaps a note of caution as well, because there's kind of the human side of things and the expertise. You need to be careful it's not lost when we're going more down the automation route.
Yeah. I haven't really seen the AI side of affecting the actual manufacturing, but I have heard conversation, that they think that AI will be able to run production. I don't see that happening that much in this industry because it truly is an art.
Yeah.
And we have to figure out how to pass on this craft to the younger generation. Sure, automation is always a good thing, right? And then moving forward our supplier, Tayobo, is constantly working with us to create new formulas, trying to figure out how to make the plate last longer, also how to be able to hold finer screens and higher resolution work, and they continue to improve the plate.
You can sense how passionate you are about this industry. You called it an art, which is great to hear. How do you ensure this art continues? Because I'm guessing trying to get the next generation of young people passionate about this, getting them trained, is difficult. And also you see it in every industry now that you'd have someone that lasts 20, 30 years and you train them and they have a job for life. But now, perhaps with globalisation, opportunities, and perhaps just the way the world has shifted, people last 2 or 3 years and then they move on. So how are you guys kind of ensuring that you've training the next generation of professionals? And is that a concern for you guys as well?
So on the plant side, I just think it's really important to get into the high schools and into the colleges and start talking about our industry, because printing, all of printing, is really cool. I mean, every single thing that you look at or pick up or touch has been printed. And I don't think people realize that. And when, if I'm sitting on an airplane and I explain to people what I do, they're like, wow, never thought about it that. I just think it's really important that we have to start getting to the kids when they're younger and tell them about all the different things that they can do in this industry.
Yeah, I agree with that, because you hear a lot about training the next generation. It's certainly in the can making business, we need to get into schools and colleges, but almost by that time it's too late. You need to be targeting these kids as young as possible and saying that manufacturing is cool, really.
It's cool,
but
yeah.
It needs to be as early as possible, because kind of by their mid-teens, people have perhaps made a decision. And yes, this isn't tech, it's not gaming, etc. But it is actually you have a job for life and you can go off in so many different tangents. It's potentially exciting for a career, but perhaps we're preaching to the converted, as they say.
Yeah, exactly. And, a lot of the people here at this industry, at least on the converter side, a lot of them started at 18, 19 out on the plant floor and have grown up in the business. And it would be good if people understood that. Not only that, at this meeting, we have buyers here, right? We have logistics here. I mean, we have all kinds of different positions that this industry touches.
Excellent. Then, Michelle, just thanks very much for your time. It's been really interesting certainly I've learned a lot in terms of the technology involved. And if our listeners need to learn a little bit more information, where can they reach you?
Well, they can reach me at Anderson and Vreeland. Do you want me to give you my email address, or?
Yeah, absolutely. Or if they want to contact you on LinkedIn, or just to get some more.
Yeah, they can contact me on LinkedIn or through Anderson Vreeland.
In the show notes, we'll provide your contact details. So if anyone wants to get in touch, or if they have any technical questions that they'd like to answer, then I'm sure they get in touch. So no, it's been a pleasure to deep dive into some of these topics, and I appreciate your time, and we'll speak soon.
Okay, thank you so much.